Hi, Bernie.
Do you have any 48s to ship?
Good afternoon. Welcome to this May the 14th meeting of the Rotary Club of Brentwood. I am Keeley Hall, and I am honored to serve as your club president in this glorious 2020-2021 Rotary year. Thanks again to Spring Hill Suites for being our gracious host this week. This is our last week here. You may hear me say that 12 more times today, just to make sure you remember, but this is our last week here. We are so thankful to them for hosting us. Patrick Wright is going to give our invocation this morning, and Lena Sugis has the pledge and the four-way test. Patrick Wright. Thank you, sir. Will you all pray with me, please? Almighty God, we thank you for all the blessings of life which you so richly bestow upon us. We're thankful for the opportunity to freely gather as a group of Rotarians committed to making this place we call home a better community, work, play, and live. Father, we ask that you bless the work we seek to do in Brentwood and throughout the world, that it might please you and benefit those with whom we come into contact. We remember those in our Rotary family today who are ill, specifically Dick Green's wife, Karen, Larry Faust, Bob Bellenfant, Robert and Dottie Fiddler, and Sherry Koss. We also pray you comfort those in our midst who are dealing with issues only known by them and to you, and that you work in each of those circumstances. We ask you bless this food to nourish our bodies and use us as your servants through our commitment to Rotary, bring about peace and to meet the needs of others. All this we ask in the name of the perfect example of service above self, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, second, third, fourth.
We certainly hope so. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Jane Covington to introduce visiting Rotarians and guests.
Well, I don't think that we have any visiting
Ladies and gentlemen,
today.
Jane Covington
Am I doing happy?
for Happy Bucks.
Is anybody happy today? Somebody's got to be happy. I mean, we've got more people in the room than we've had in a long time. Here we go. Steve Grissom's happy.
I'm happy. I had a phone call, if y'all remember Ben Turner, that was in our club. So Ben made a contact over at the Tennessee Baptist Children's Home, and he called me today just to tell me that he talked to Kelly Campbell, and this is just congratulations to this club. He said the difference we have made of going into their homes and sharing dinner with them at Christmas is just made the biggest difference in the world. And Kelly was just so appreciative of us wrapping gifts and the different things that we've done for them. And he was just so appreciative of what we've done, because he says a lot of these kids, we may be the only adult contact when they graduate that they could reach out to that they will ever have. And so we have to realize where these kids are coming from. And then I'd also like to say, I had the pleasure of being at the Capitol yesterday, I was invited by the governor to be present when he announced about his appropriations in spending over $5 million for end slavery corporations like In Slavery Tennessee. And it was great. And Tim Tebow was there. I got to spend some time with Tim, and what a passionate guy. And he's doing great things. And so if you can watch his presentation, if you go to Tim Tebow Foundation, you will see the link, our YouTube video of his presentation. So powerful yesterday. It was great.
We got approval to occupy our total facility, including our parking garage. No, we will no longer park cars on the grass.
That's awesome. Curry's out of trouble now. Oh, we got lots of happiness over here.
I'm just happy because my oldest graduated college last Friday, which is why I wasn't here. Looking forward to getting him off the payroll.
I am more than happy to be back. This has been hard and I'm happy to see y'all. And I'm also happy, my neighbor Jody Rawl is a new member and I'm just happy that she's here and thank you.
I'm happy that Ray Little's been reelected as mayor of Brentwood.
Absolutely. We're all happy about that.
Does anybody know who the vice mayor is? Brentwood?
I heard that it was a sketch guy that's kind of sketchy.
Well, the family
Yeah.
name anyway.
And he parks cars on grass, right?
Right. All right.
Anybody else happy? Anybody?
Bloodborne pathogen exposure control plan.
I'm supposed to have an annual update.
Oh, so.
And they said the last one was
19.
19, yeah.
All right. Good. That might be what it is. Okay.
Even if there's no update, you just have to go through and redate it.
Yeah. No, okay. I'll track that down. I talked to John Russ about talking with that.
Okay.
All right. So there you have it. Technical fun of hybrid Zoom in-person meetings. Speaking of the in-person meetings, if you were attending in person today, that's a weird statement for me to make. You are attending in person if I'm looking at you. This is the last week, once again, that we will be meeting in this facility, Spring Hill Suites. Next week, does anybody know where we are meeting? The new police headquarters, and Chief Hughes will be giving us a tour. We are very excited about that. And I do have a few announcements regarding next week's meeting at the police headquarters. I will send this out in reflections this week, but so that we're all aware, just trying to communicate as much as possible. The members should park in front of the new building. Wear your masks in, but you can remove them when we eat, which is key because eating with the masks on is difficult. We will not have a sound system per se, not the quality that we have here. So it will be more ideal for you to attend in person if that is possible and if that is safe for you. Everybody is going to make their own decision on that, of course, but in person quality of that meeting will be a little bit better than the Zoom quality because we will be walking around and doing a tour. We will have Zoom available. It just may not be quite the same experience. So try to attend in person if possible. But here's the thing, people. We are limited in our capacity. So we can only have 50 people in that room, which means once we include Chief and some police folks, we're going to limit it to the first 45 Rotarians that sign up. You will get to be there in person, but we're going to have to cut it off at the first 45. So you want to be in that group of first 45 if possible. Yes, Kip. That email is going to come from Jack Massari, right, Jack? We're so glad to see Jack here today, too, by the way. Jack will be sending that out probably on Monday. Maybe sometimes he'll send it out even Sunday night, something like that. But whenever Jack is available to send it out is when that's coming out. So do respond to that. If you want to attend in person, be one of the first 45 to sign up. Otherwise, we will have a Zoom availability of that.
Hey,
There
Keely.
will be a tour of the building where masks are required. So eating, you can remove your mask, but during the tour, masks will be required. Did somebody on Zoom have a question for me?
Yes. So I'm assuming it's not a full lunch, just donuts. Is that right?
I need subtitles. What was that, Jason?
Never mind, just bad joke.
Oh, yeah, it will be a full lunch. It will not just be coffee and donuts. That is correct.
Actually, it was a great joke.
I thought Brian Goss made that joke. What'd you say, Brian?
I said, actually, it was a great joke.
Okay, let me see. Where did I go? I lost my place. Larry's going to come up and correct any falsehoods I may have just made on that last announcement, but he's also got a golf announcement. I'm always nervous that I said something wrong. Larry, take it away.
You did very well. Just as I told you. Perfect. Okay, quick golf update. Does everybody remember why we have the golf tournament? We have to raise money for the BRCCF in order to give out grants, as we did 2 weeks ago, in order to work on the inclusion playground, in order to do $27,000 in scholarships, in order to do. So it's a very important event for our club. It's not just a fun golf tournament. Everybody got that? So where are we today? We're 108 days out from our golf tournament. We are about 60% of where we need to be raising money to make our goal, which is $90,000. I want to do more than that, but we're 60%. So why are we only 60%? Well, we're 28 major sponsorships short of what we had last year. So there's 28 sponsors that all of us got last year that we haven't got this year yet. That should be a slam dunk. There are 66 whole sponsors that we got last year who we have not got this year. 66. So if you take those two numbers and add them up and multiply them times the amount of money that is, we make our goal. If we just get what we got last year. We've been very fortunate. We've gotten a number of new major sponsors this year. That's wonderful, and thank everybody who did that. And we've sold 13 whole sponsors. 13. We sold 106 last year. We've sold 13 whole sponsors. 7 of those are new. That's great. But let's get the ones that we had last year. Those should be easy. Should be. I want to recognize a couple of people, 3 people. One of them's here. Devin McClendon has sold 4 sponsorships, $4,900 into the game. So thank you, Devin. Lewis Rankin has sold 4 sponsorships, $3,950. And he told me, I'm just getting started. Wonderful. Thank you, Lewis. And the king from last year, Mr. Kaplan, has got 3 for $3,600. And I asked him last week, I said, are you getting ready to go? I said, where are you in your sponsorships? And he said, I haven't started yet. So there you go. So that's 3 guys, and that's about $12,000 right there that they have gotten alone by themselves. That is wonderful. So I guess my message to everybody else is, let's get to work. We've still got 108 days. We got plenty of time. Everybody knows who you had last year. I don't have to tell you. I can if you don't remember. I've got the list, and so does your team captain. So let's get to work. Let's pick up where we were. And let's make this thing work. For those of you who have not been on our website, I hope everybody goes, oh yeah, I've been there. But just in case you haven't looked at our website, this is the Brentwood Rotary Golf Classic website. And it's got anything you want to know about Rotary up there in the about. It's got the contest for that day. It's got pictures. Curry Andrews in there about 6 times. It's got everything you want to know about our tournament. Click on the registration. So when someone, a sponsor, or you go to our website and scroll down, you'll see our sponsors. And you can see we've done a great job of selling our bigger sponsors so far. But all the sponsorship information is on there. Start pass sponsor, side score. These are the ones that have not sold yet. They're the least expensive ones. Whole sponsor, obviously, hazard sponsor. They can go on there, they click that they want to put it on their credit card, that they want 1, and then it gives them, you feed the information in, it's easy. We've had a bunch of people use this so far. So if you haven't been on the website, everybody should have the address. I've sent it out about 8 times. So if you don't have it, let me know, but go on there and look at it. It's a great website. It's an easy sell, and it's easy for our sponsors to use, most important. So that's all I've got. I won't bother you for 2 or 3 weeks, but let's get some sales in there for the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And speaking of those funds that we have raised through the golf tournament in years past, specifically last year, I have another letter to read, this one from Brightstone. Dear Susie, thank you so very much for supporting Brightstone's Land of Dreams campus with a gift designated for a pier on the lake and trail reparation. Your donation of $10,000, with Susie's personal donation of not really, it's to Susie, but it was to us, was received on December 15th, 2020, at a time when financial support and mission awareness are needed more than ever. Your gift brings hope and encouragement to our students who live each day with the challenges of intellectual and developmental disabilities. The safety and well-being of our students, families, and staff continues to be our top priority, and one thing that has never wavered at Brightstone is our commitment to our mission to provide the best services for our students. Despite disruption to our programs and services, we've adapted a virtual platform where our teachers share daily devotionals, educational and innovative learning activities, and social connectivity online. In a year of so much change and transition, we offered 930 virtual classes to our students. The in-person program continues for those who can comply with safety protection measures. Our Brightstone staff have been creative, resilient, and dedicated through it all. It does go on, but I did want to give you just a taste of what Brightstone is doing with the funds that we were able to donate. Again, this has been an incredible year for us to be able to give back in actually larger ways than we had previously been able to give because we were raising more funds through the golf tournament. So we as an organization were able to actually increase our support of all of these organizations when everybody else that they were relying on for support had been stepping back. So you guys in this room and all those who worked so hard to raise the funds through the golf tournament should be very, very proud of what we've been able to do. So thank you. Now, I feel weird. I feel like we should be inducting someone. We've had a new member induction like every week for the past month, and I feel like we're out of sorts, but that's not true. Today we now get to talk about some questions that you do not know the answers to. So our speaker today is coming to us to talk to us about the economy. He's an economics professor. And I thought, what's the one individual who has done more for our economy than anybody else in the history of humankind? That person, of course, is Curry Andrews. Somebody already said it. So Curry, I asked Curry to come up with a few questions that might challenge us a bit. So he has given me some wonderful trivia questions. So the parenthetical comment here is blame Curry, not Keeley, for the first several of these questions. All right, so we all know the rules by this point, but just in case, I'm going to be redundant. In-person team, you are on one team, thus the name in-person team. Zoom, you are on team number 2. So don't answer the in-person questions when I ask them. And in-person team, you don't help them out when I'm asking them a question. I'm going to ask one question of each team, and I'm going to go back and forth until we have a glorious winner. All right, in-person, first question is for you. What is the number of vehicles parked on the grass? No, I'm just kidding. What is the number of vehicles on U.S. roads today? Number of vehicles on U.S. roads today. It is okay to use the Google. Oh, absolutely. Google away, people. Sure. Okay, Sybil is saying more than 12. That's correct, Sybil. Good job. The correct answer is 280 million. 280 million. It was on the tip of your, okay. But you got it right. Yes. All right, Zoom. Next question is for you. Hopefully we've stalled long enough for you to get your devices out. Number of licensed drivers in the USA today. Total number of licensed drivers. It's also more than 12, so that answer will not be accepted this time.
229 million.
230 million. No one is surprised that Jason Hulse came up with that answer. Good job, Jason. Thank you.
I waited for somebody else, but I don't know.
All right, so what we have really, and we all know this at this point, it's the in-person team versus Jason. Come on, Zoom, everybody else, get in. Okay, in-person team. Next question is to you. What's the total number of miles of roads in the USA? Total mileage in both paved and unpaved roads in the USA. I am absolutely going to accept that. 4.12 million miles. Yes, that's amazing. You just threw that out. Oh, no, he had to Google. Okay. Breaking it down, 268 million miles are paved. That's a lot of unpaved roads. 35% of US roads are unpaved. They're all in Alabama, that's right. Okay, back to Zoom. Number of filling stations. This would be gasoline slash diesel slash ethanol. Number of filling stations across, yeah, with or without gas currently. Number of filling stations across America.
150,000.
Jonathan Merck, what was that?
150,000.
291 million.
That seems excessive. I am going to take Jonathan Merck's answer of 150,000. Curry, the correct answer, because Curry wrote it, is 168,000, but that's close enough. We're getting there. Our economist speaker is like, that's close enough? It's like 10% off. It's more than 10% off. Okay. In person. Number of current charging stations in public use. My garage does not count. Number of charging stations in public use in the United States of America. Oh, we are on a roll, but that one I don't know if I can accept. The correct answer is 17,550. I know it's correct because it's in Curry's handwriting. All right, Zoom. This is your chance for the go-ahead run. Zoom. When was the first hybrid electric car built? What was the year the first hybrid electric car came out? And it must be an exact.
1898.
1899.
Longer than 10 years ago. In the United States. In the United States. First hybrid electric car in the United States.
Change the question.
Well, I just didn't finish.
Someone said 1999.
Say it again, Jonathan Merck.
Someone said 1999.
1999, that would have been Prince's guess, but that is incorrect. Some people are wondering who Prince is right now. The correct answer is 1896. You heard that correct, folks. 1896. The first hybrid electric vehicle. Anybody in the room want to take a guess at what that vehicle, the first one sold in the United States, sold for at auction recently? $420,000. Was not the original sticker price. Where was it built? Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut. An Armstrong. I'm going to call it an Andrews from now on. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Keeley, we've got an economist coming to speak to us. You've asked us a bunch of questions we don't know the answers to. We're feeling a little down. I need some layup questions. So this is the phase of this game where we go into the easy questions. I know you can do this. I've written these with you, the Rotary Club of Brentwood, in mind. I feel like you can get some questions correct. In person. Today's speaker earned his PhD from George Mason University. Which of our nation's founding fathers was George Mason University named after? You are delaying far too long. No one is hazarding an answer. After whom was George Mason University named?
George Mason.
George Mason.
George Mason University. I'm giving it to you. Come on, people. All right, Zoom. Zoom. Today's speaker is a professor at MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University. Name one of the school colors for the MTSU Blue Raiders.
Blue. Blue.
What do we have?
Electric blue.
Blue. That is amazing. Thank you.
It's
All right, in
electric
person.
blue.
You were astounding, the last question. How about this one? Today is the second week in a row we've had a speaker named Dan. What was the first name of last week's speaker? Oh my goodness. You are entirely correct. I could not even trick you with that. I totally got that wrong. Yes, Beckett. Beckett was last week's speaker. Dan was 2 weeks ago. Lovely. Oh, the hits just keep on coming. All right, tiebreaker question. We're tied. It always happens. I can't even explain it. We're always tied. Tiebreaker question. You know how this goes now. If you know the answer to this question, you just say your name, and then you will be the one who can answer. So that's how we get, it's like the lightning round. You have to buzz in. Your name is your buzzer. So everybody on Zoom, unmute, so that if you know the answer to this question, you say your name, and I will call on the first person. Here's the question. What's your first name?
Sarah.
Steve! Steve got it correct. In-person team, you are the winners today. Very well done. Give yourselves a hand.
We had a technical electronic delay that should be counted.
Yeah, no excuses, no excuses. All right. With no further ado, and I know you're all super happy about that, Sybil Buchanan will come up to introduce today's actual speaker.
You really set the bar here. So, just kidding. As we go along in our day-to-day living, it can be easy to ignore the unfathomable $28 trillion national debt. But then just this week, the economist Peter Schiff caught my attention when he predicted that the cost of living will increase 20% this year. And he also stated that 1/3 of U.S. household income is now coming from the government. When hearing comments like this, I become very concerned for our growing senior population who live on fixed incomes. And what will the American economy look like for future generations? Will your grandchildren know debt like no other? And will America remain the leading financially strong country it is? Of course, one could ask 10 economists these questions and likely get 10 variations on the answer. But today, we are privileged to have back as our speaker, Dr. Daniel J. Smith from Middle Tennessee State University, where he is the director of the Political Economy Research Institute and professor of economics at the Jones College of Business. Dr. Smith serves as the North American co-editor of the Review of Austrian Economics and is the president-elect of the Society for the Development of Austrian Economics. He's authored 2 books and has published numerous op-eds in national and regional outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, The Hill, Investors Business Daily, and CNBC.com. Dr. Smith received his PhD in economics from George Mason University, and his presentation today will focus on debt, deficits, and debasement. Oh boy. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Daniel Smith.
Thank you very much. Sybil, you really set up the crowd for what economists are known for, the dismal science. So sorry for bringing you down after that fun. Hopefully this won't be too much of hopefully it won't make you all pessimistic going forward after this. Just a little, and thank you very much for having me back here. I'm very excited to have the opportunity, and my apologies for those of you who are not excited about that and have to listen to me again, blame Sybil for that. But last time I was here, I was making promises as an academic saying we're starting a new center. We're focused on the relationship between a market society and human flourishing, and we're going to do this and that. And I'm happy to say that we have delivered on that. So our first PhD graduate, Amelia Suggs, just graduated. She took a job at King's University in Bristol, Tennessee, where she's going to go teach sound economics to thousands of students over her career. So that's really what we're focused on is especially the PhD students. We've issued policy studies, and these are all available online on Tennessee's public pension, Tennessee's K-12 education, and occupational licensing. That's forthcoming. We have done the two books, Money and the Rule of Law, Political Economy, and Public Pensions. Academic base is really important. I know talking to non-academics are like, who reads academic research? And the answer is nobody, essentially, but it's really important for lending credibility to everything else that we do. Public outreach is really important for what we're trying to do. Most academics prefer to just hide in the ivory tower and talk to other academics. Our goal is to actually get academics that are earning the fiduciary responsibility of being on taxpayer support and actually contributing to policy discussions. We've had a lot of events. You're not on our list of events. We have a sign-up sheet outside on that table, and you can get most of them will be live streamed as well as in person. We also are going to be hosting Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal. We're going to be hosting him at the Hillwood Country Club. So we will be hosting some events in this neck of the woods as well. And this is just an example of a couple of recent events we've had. We've had Bert Folsom up on Uncle Sam Can't Count, and Ben Powell gave a talk on myths and realities of socialism. Gotten a lot of recognitions and awards, and we have affiliated faculty across the university. So we're making friends across campus. So that's just a little update on what we're doing. Here's my little gift, a discount code for my upcoming book at Cambridge University Press. You just type in BEDKEY21 at the Cambridge site, you'll get 20% off. So feel free and email me at the end if you actually are. Very few people are very interested in that topic, but if you are, I'd be thrilled to get you 20% off. All right, so now what I'm talking about today. The title, Debt, Deficit, and Debasement, comes from Adam Smith. When he wrote The Wealth of Nations, he talked about the tendency of nations to engage in juggling tricks, where they engage in deficits, and then that turns into debt, and then that turns into eventual debasement or inflation. And he just saw this as a natural tendency of nations throughout history. And the major reason for it is government officials are unable or unwilling to tackle debt, right? Any candidate running for office saying, hey, let's pay off the national debt isn't going to get elected. That's just contemporary democracy today, and throughout world, I guess throughout history. It's been it's very hard to do that. It's also, you're not going to get elected if you're saying I'm going to cut spending, right? So that's just not a very electable thing to do. So they end up employing these juggling tricks, and especially if they could push these costs into the future. So if you could push these costs into the future, especially in an obscure way that makes it hard to understand, it's a lot easier to make the spending promises you want to get elected. And this is a nonpartisan talk. Both parties are engaged in this. So nobody out there like, oh, my side doesn't do that. No, both sides engage in this. They like to engage in the public spending that advances their agenda. They prefer not to have everyone pay for it because that would make taxpayers angry. So they push those costs onto the future. And just to get an idea, this is just a facts ma'am type discussion here. Surpluses and deficits as a percentage of GDP. Could have also done it with just adjusting for inflation, but I think it ends up being both of the graphics very similar. This just gives you an idea of over time where we are. For peacetime, we are in unprecedented territory in terms of our deficit as percentage of GDP. Clearly, with COVID-19, we've engaged in a lot of deficit spending. And of course, we had a lot of deficit spending immediately after the financial crisis as well. This is federal debt as a percentage of GDP. Once again, we're reaching really high territory. This data set doesn't go all the way back to World War II, but there would have been another spike there. This is just giving you an idea of where we stand as a nation. This is interest on federal debt as a percentage of GDP. So it's the amount of debt service we're paying. Obviously, you see that big spike right there at the end of the 70s and beginning of the 80s. That was because interest rates were really high at that time. So our debt service costs were really high. Right now, interest rates are really low. So our debt service cost is really low, despite the fact that the amount of debt we have has been going up. Of course, this does pose some risk, right? Because if interest rates do go up, cost of that can rise substantially, and that can eat up a large percentage of the federal budget, taking away funds that are normally available for traditional government services if we have to pay more just to pay off the interest on the national debt. This does not include, so Sybil mentioned the 28 trillion. That does not include unfunded liabilities. So here's a trivia question. I shouldn't put the answer up there, but if you had to guess what unfunded liabilities are at the federal level, Social Security, Medicare, some ACA obligations, how many of you would have guessed over 200 trillion? Probably nobody. Okay, we have one person that would have known, but very few people actually know that is our extent of our obligations. Those technically, if the government was held to the same standards as the private sector when it comes to accounting, those would be included in the national debt. But they're able to evade that, I think, in an obscure and kind of a shady fashion by calling them unfunded liabilities. We've made these promises to people. We owe them in the future, but not on the budget today. So those are liabilities that we expect to come. And then you can add on the state and local debt of unfunded pension liabilities of 4 trillion. We've seen with the COVID stimulus packages, they have given unrestricted funds to states, and states like Illinois, New York, Kentucky, that had some of the worst pension debt were the ones advocating for it to be unrestricted. The reason why is they wanted some of those funds. There's some language in the bill that prevents them from directly using it, but money is very fungible, right? So you take that money and you spend it on education. Well, that frees up education money that you can now put towards public pensions. So there's a lot of states around the nation that, fortunately not Tennessee, that are struggling with pension debt. So you can add that on to that as well. Lawrence Kotlikoff, he's not a right-leaning economist. He's actually a very left-leaning economist. He argues that using accounting standards required by the private sector shows that we're already bankrupt as a nation if you include these obligations. So we've had a recent round of stimulus, and I'm trying to break it down and not use this as very technical language. But basically, aggregate demand is all of our demand, collective demand in the United States. The traditional argument for any type of stimulus package is going to be that there's a fall in aggregate demand, therefore government can step up and boost aggregate demand through their spending, and then we can get the economy rolling again. That could jumpstart the economy again. But the problem with COVID is that it wasn't a fall in demand. It was actually supply side constraints. It was actually people still wanted to buy stuff. It's just that companies quit producing stuff temporarily, either through voluntary lockdowns or government-imposed lockdowns. And then we had, and currently we're seeing shortages on the supply side with shipping ports. Long Beach, California, for a long time has had a lot of ships, container ships sitting outside, unable to load because of the COVID restrictions on the docks. So we've had trouble getting stuff. Cars, there's an automobile theme to the questions. Obviously, the chips for automobile manufacturers have been in short supply. They cut their orders early on because they expected demand to actually fall. Of course, demand didn't fall, and now they're like, oh, well, we need those chips, so now they're trying to get those chips for produce cars. That's another supply side restraint. And then even the Ever Given being stuck on the Suez Canal, it's another. It stopped up shipping for a little bit. Another supply side constraint. So we have demand is fine. People want to buy stuff. The problem was supply side constraints. So what happens when you stimulate demand when there's been no fall in demand, and the problem is actually supply? That runs the risk of inflation. And it's a real concern. I'm not like some crazy, being some crazy. There's legitimate, economists are at least concerned at this point with us stimulating demand. It is going to generate inflation because of the unique nature of COVID-19. The real fundamental question comes down to where are we, taking the pulse of the economy in terms of employment, and where has the economy recovered? The economy has recovered, then we shouldn't be stimulating the economy further, because then we're going to risk running inflation. And this is the most recent unemployment data. You can see it go down at the end. This is pretty good. We've seen a drastic recovery. Pretty impressive, especially given some of the unemployment benefits that have been made available through the federal supplement. So during COVID-19, state level unemployment benefits were supplemented pretty generously at the federal level. Once again, and I'll give the next slide shows that this is nonpartisan. There are economists on both left and right that are very concerned about this, but the level of benefits provided exceeds the minimum wage in every single state. So the unemployment benefits being paid pays more. In case of Tennessee, the equivalent hourly wage of unemployment benefits with the federal benefits was $15.75, and the current minimum wage, obviously, is the federal minimum wage for Tennessee is $7.25, right? So now the design of this was clearly, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. The design of it was clearly more of a universal basic income of support for people during COVID-19. It wasn't a traditional unemployment benefit program, because nobody wants to design an unemployment insurance scheme where people are incentivized not to go back to work, which is currently what we have. Currently what we're seeing with states like Tennessee, Montana, South Carolina, refusing those federal supplements because they're noticing that people aren't going back to work. And just an example, I've been looking, the city of Murfreesboro keeps they're begging people to work for them. They've had some really good jobs available for the past couple months, and I keep seeing them show up again because they're unable to fulfill them. We've all probably talked to restaurant owners who are struggling to hire workers. People don't, with this generous of level of unemployment benefits, people aren't going to go back to work. And this is, and I promised that this is a nonpartisan issue. This is Justin Furman, the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to President Obama, expressing deep concern about that, the generosity of those unemployment benefits. So the reason I'm bringing that into the equation, or the reason I'm addressing that, is, like I said, if we stimulate the economy, well, the economy has already fairly much recovered, and we're preventing the economy from fully recovering because of the generosity of those unemployment benefits. We are at a point where we could see inflation emerge. And you could see this. This is the 5-year forward inflation expectation. It's just one measure of inflation. There's a lot of other measures. They all showed an uptick. We're seeing consumers expect more inflation. Retailers expect more inflation. We're seeing more. The latest report kind of surprised investors with an uptick in inflation as well. So we do see us moving in that direction. This is the April 9th producer price index. We're seeing that there was a jump, especially in gasoline prices in March. People were starting to go back to work. You saw more demand for fuel. So you did see some prices go up, but you did see some prices go down. Fresh and dry vegetables, surgical and medical instruments. So it is kind of a mixed bag when you actually dig into the data. But overall, there is an upward trend in inflation. Most people expect between 3 and 5% inflation next year. Federal Reserve is trying to target 2% level inflation, but as you saw, from that inflation expectation. People are expecting that to turn out even higher over the next 5 years. So this is John Cochran, one of my favorite economists. He's at the University of Chicago, and he's pointing out this University of Michigan survey where they expect 3.7%. And I love this line: "The ingredients are in the pot, the fire is on." So that's my general take. It's not fear mongering. Hey, inflation's coming. We need to be really worried about it. But all the conditions are there. And they have not been there for a long time. This is Larry White and George Mason. He looks at the latest CBO report, and they're projecting a U.S. federal budget deficit of $200 billion a month in 2021 this year, and they're currently buying $120 billion a month in securities. So the Federal Reserve is financing approximately 60% of the deficit by expanding the monetary base. So once again, printing money, right? That is a legitimate concern. Once again, I'm not like up here beating a drum like inflation is coming, guaranteed, but it is something to be very worried about at this point. And there are some long-term considerations with the national debt at where it is. This book by Reinhardt and Rogoff, This Time is Different. It counts through world history some of the most famous examples of nations falling apart due to fiscal irresponsibility. And each time they say this, the tendency is to say this time is different. You know, we're more advanced. Hey, we have a lot of Ivy League economists. We know how to deal with this every time, and yet the story ends up the same. So it is something that we do have to be concerned about. Greg Mankiw at Harvard University frames it as like what he calls a deficit gamble. So if we have a lot of debt, and as long as the return on government debt is lower than the average rate of economic growth, we win that gamble. But as soon as the return on government debt exceeds the average rate of economic growth, then we lose, and we get in serious trouble at that point. And so the question, and especially the concern there, is we're not prepared for extreme events. Obviously, no one can be. We couldn't predict COVID at a time. I mean, we were being warned that global pandemics were a possibility and a major concern. You think of someone like, oh gosh, ask me at the end. I'll forget the name of there's a Swedish economist that has been warning about global pandemics for a long time, and they're actually arguing that COVID was actually an easy one. We lucked out. This is like a training ground for some of the worst things that could happen. For us to be able to find a vaccine so quickly, and for us to find ways to mitigate it and get the economy running, we really lucked out. We should be more prepared for global pandemics in the future, financial crises, asteroid strikes, solar flares. You may think I'm crazy saying solar, but actually, if you look into it, our power grid is not very robust to something like that. If we get solar flares typical of what we've had in world history, and they hit the right spot, our power grid could be out for quite a long time, which could be a concern. Major wars, climate change, things like that. If you have a lot of debt, you're not prepared at those times when you need that physical capacity. The other concern is crowding out. Whenever government issues debt, they pull that money away from the private sector, and that raises interest rates. So that means that you're getting less investment by private individuals investing their own money. You're getting more investment by government officials elected to public office. So then it becomes a question of, okay, is the marginal dollar of investment made by politicians more effective at generating economic growth and prosperity rather than the marginal dollar of private investment? That's up for you to consider on your own. I'm trying to be as nonpartisan as possible. But I think it is really important to point out, some of the entrepreneurs throughout world history, like you think of Airbnb. Like if someone came to you and said, hey, I got a great idea. We're going to rent a room in your house out to strangers. Or Uber, we're going to rent you're going to be able to drive a stranger around town. Would any of you have invested in that? No, we would have. That sounds like a horrible idea, right? And yet those are the ideas that pay off. You can even go back to John Rockefeller. He invested in what is called skunk oil. He bought up these huge fields of skunk oil. No one knew how to refine it in a way that would make it not stink when used. And he hired a bunch of engineers to find a way to do that. His own board went invested. They said, no, you have to use your own money, Johnny. And so he did, and it paid off tremendously. So you have to keep in mind that those marginal investments are usually the long shots. A lot of them end up not paying off, but the few that do end up making us all much better off. Valerie Ramey, she's at University of California, San Diego. This is a very prestigious journal of Economic Perspectives. Her estimate of government spending, for every dollar of government spending, how much private sector activity does it generate? So she did a long run study in the United States, and at best, the average is 0.6 to 0.8. So $1 of US of government spending generates 0.6 to 0.8 of a dollar of economic sector activity. So you lose money with that government spending, perhaps up to 1, but the evidence, especially during recessions and times of slack, typically not robust. Once again, she's actually a left-leaning economist, so this is not I'm not putting up someone on the far right like Art Laffer here. Finally, there's also a bridge between taxation and spending. It's really difficult for when you're in the market, when you want to buy something, go out and buy it, and if you don't want to buy it, you don't buy it. And that's how producers end up deciding, how they allocate their capital. We're going to make this for these people. But in the public sector, it's really hard to actually ask people what they want when it's separated from having to pay a price for it. To give you an example, I was at Troy University in Alabama for 7 years, and they were making a new athletic facility, or no, actually a new gym facility for everyone, students and faculty. And they sent out us a little survey, and they had little check boxes, and they say, what do you want? It's like lazy river, sauna, steam room, track. I checked them all. It's like, yeah, I want these all because I wasn't paying for it, right? So that's what it is with voters. It's easy to just, yeah, I want this, 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 and this. If there's no budget there where you have to say, okay, this is actually how I would allocate these dollars, you're going to say you want everything. So traditionally, what we've done is we've had balanced budgets where we say, okay, you taxpayers want to pay for some public goods, and here's the cost. How do you want to allocate? Those expenditures? And then there's actually that link. So we actually can say, okay, do you actually want this thing? Are you willing to pay for it? And if you're not willing to pay for it, you actually don't want that thing. So that link between taxation and spending is really important, but it gets severed whenever you engage in public debt, right? Because you can push that debt you can push the cost into the future, and therefore you never have to make that decision. You can just say yes to everything, and then leave that to future generations to be concerned about. Now, to be fair, there are economists on both the right and left who are not concerned about that. Art Laffer would be one on the right who is not concerned about government debt. Paul Krugman on the left would argue that public debt is not a concern. Their argument is very similar. It's that we're making investments that are going to increase economic growth, and therefore future generations are going to be far wealthier than we are, so we don't have to be concerned about that. There is, and part of their argument is this is a technical argument, it's Ricardian equivalence, but basically it is that the argument is that debt and taxation are the same, because when we issue debt, you, the taxpayers, recognize that it's actually future taxes, and so you cut your expenditure today to save up to pay those future taxes. How many of you do that? If it's short term, such as if any of your employers did do the cut to, what was it, Social Security? They cut during COVID, or the Social Security that they cut, you didn't have to make contributions, but you'd have to pay them back next year. Short term, sure, but long term, when you're talking about 20 years in the future, most people don't do that, and that's the basics. That's the crux of the argument that we owe the debt to ourselves. Oh, we just owe it to ourselves, so we don't have to be concerned about it. But the thing is that it's not owed to ourselves. Who buys government debt today, or who would prefer government debt to finance any project today with government debt versus taxation? Well, it's who's paying the taxes today. Majority of the taxes are paid by the wealthiest in society. They're the ones that are going to prefer for us to use debt rather than taxation. So we're going to end up engaging issuing more debt rather than financing it with taxation. That pushes it out in the future, and that leads to a bigger government than we would be willing to pay for if we had to pay those taxes today. So you could make the argument that deficit spending leads to both excessive and less judicious public spending because you're pushing those costs onto someone else in the future. Therefore, you're going to be less vigilant of that spending because you don't have to worry about paying those costs. And then there's also long-term moral consideration. Once again, Lawrence Kotlikoff, he's got this book, The Clash of Generations. He's a left-leaning economist. He argues that there's a moral concern that we're imposing costs on future generations, and that we should really be concerned about that. Rather than leaving a legacy gift to our children, we're actually leaving a substantial amount of debt. So, and I'm not a philosopher. I'm an economist. So I don't have I have personal opinions about that. But I leave that for you to chew on. So that's just a broad assessment of where we are. I was trying to be as nonpartisan. I know it's really hard when we talk about debt and expenditure, but that's kind of my broad assessment of where we are. The key takeaway is yes, be concerned about inflation, but don't be investing in gold right now. Heavily and putting all your assets in gold. I don't think we're at that point. We should be concerned about the national debt. We're past the most economic harm from COVID-19. Thankfully, we can move forward. So we should start focusing on getting our long-term fundamentals in place so we can be better prepared for future crises. We never know what form they're going to take and when they're going to hit. 20 years, prior before the financial crisis or COVID, we're in a world where with the Greenspan put where everyone thought everything was going to go good forever, right? And out of left field, we got financial crisis. Out of left field, we got this. There's going to be something. When you study business cycles, it's every 10, 15 years. Thing comes along. I don't know how it's going to look, but we should be prepared for it. And right now, I don't think we're physically prepared for that in the way we are feeling right now. I left some time for questions, of course. I'm sorry, that ended up being more technical than I wanted. I'm a little rusty. This is my first talk in over probably a year and a half. So my apologies for making it a little too technical.
What's your way out?
And that's all the time we have for today. Actually, in 12 seconds, what's your way out?
My hope is in a re-embracing of the constitutional perspective, that we move back to being a republic rather than a democracy, right? Right now, we've increasingly become focused on whatever the will of the majority, whatever 51% wants, they get to run the agenda. I think we should move back to having constitutional constraints that we respect and appreciate. And I think that's a long-term proposition. That's why I'm an economics professor. That's why I'm teaching. That's why I'm running a center focused on that. The PhD students I produce know sound economics. The undergraduate students I teach know sound economics. It takes 15 in a class to actually go through the fundamentals, supply and demand, and get to that point where they can understand it. It's not indoctrination. I'm nonpartisan as I can be in my lectures, even more so than I was today. But it's just teaching basic economics to think, basic accounting, government finances. I think that's the only long-term solution is just to educate people. That's why I'm in the business I am in.
Hey, Dan, real quick. How do your students, when you present this type of information, that obviously there's imbalances, there's non-logic for what's going on, do they understand it? And two, how do they respond to it?
Yeah, so I've been very impressed. So I've worked primarily with the undergrad population, with the honors college students at Middle Tennessee, and they're the cream of the crop. They really know what they're doing. They come in skeptical, which is good. But I would say by the time they leave the classroom, they have a deeper appreciation for these issues and think more like an economist would think about these issues. So I'm pretty happy with our success rate in terms of convincing students to be more informed citizens in the voting booth, and just to ask, ask tougher questions when it comes to policies. Is this the best way to do it? Will this actually achieve what we want it to achieve? Some students are beyond reach. When there's always going to be the students are just too far gone to understand it, or they just don't thinking like an economist is not natural, right? I mean, it takes training, and it's really hard to think about numbers. It's also, I mean, at some points you feel cold-hearted, right? Because you're using less empathy. And I know that sounds crazy, but Paul Bloom has a book against empathy, and actually empathy can mislead us, right? Because you're thinking about, okay, this one individual I can help, but you're not thinking about, okay, if I help that one individual, do I create something that's actually going to hurt more individuals on next? And people think that's cold-hearted, but I actually think it's a we're morally obligated to that type of engage in that type of thing.
All right, we are pretty much at the end of our time, but I did want to give a chance. It looks like we have a couple of questions on Zoom. Do we want to pick one? Second one, okay. I cannot read that. Is it true majority of debt is owed to American citizens, not foreign countries?
Yes.
Very well answered. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, some nationals in other countries, especially China, do own some of that national debt, but it's a small percentage compared to the U.S.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We appreciate your time today. Once again, you have enlightened us, and we appreciate it. If you are one of those folks that has a question that has not yet been answered, or if you just want to know more information about what he has to offer, there is a sign-up list that he mentioned earlier. Please, as you exit here, if you would like to be on their mailing list, or if you'd like to be a part of, I think they do some research projects here and there, just go ahead and put your name and your email down, even if you don't want more information. Put your name and email down as you exit the room. Are there any other announcements before we adjourn for the good of the club? All right. If that's it, then stay safe, be healthy, and keep serving. We are adjourned.